Hello all my crafty people out there. This is going to be kind of a continuation of a couple of videos. I did a video on how to make bias tape so you can customize pieces with the same fabric or coordinating fabric for your anything from quilting to jackets, whatever you need it for. This is the jacket that we worked on, and I finished the edges with bias tape, and I did these mitered corners. Now they're very small mitered corners on this particular jacket because there was quite a few layers to go through, but I wanted to show that to you on a sample, and I'm going to show you how we're going to make that mitered corner so it would be something you could put to use on any kind of project like this or a quilt itself. So let's go to the table and miter some corners. Okay, everybody, here's our sample. This is a sample piece, leftover piece from the quilt that we used to make the jacket and some of the binding. Now, what I want to do is I'm just going to bind and miter this corner to show you the process. It's pretty simple. Most people will do one of two things when they're binding, especially on a quilt. They're either going to sew it to the front and roll it over to the back and either hand stitch it or stitch it down like stitching in the ditch from the front. You have to be very good to do that, and you have to have a nice wide band to make sure it loops over like that. Or you can do it the other way, same concept though, you would stitch it onto the back and roll it over to the front. But in that case, you definitely want to be able to stitch it in the ditch from the back because you don't want to have to hand stitch the front. That doesn't look good. So we are technically, this is the front. We're calling it the front of the quilt, although this is a two-sided piece. You know what I'm saying. We're going to run our 1/4" seam. This is the raw edge of the binding. What this is a 2-inch piece of fabric that's folded in half and been pressed. And our raw edge is going to be up against the raw edge of our quilt or our project. And we're going to sew from one end down here. Now, usually you'd leave some opening here, obviously, so you can meet your binding. But in this particular case, we're going to sew down here, and we're going to sew 1/4 inch away from the edge. In other words, our seam allowance. Okay? Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. You can stick a pin in it, so you can just remember where that is. I like to make a little mark, so that's my 1/4 inch mark. I need to add some chalk. So that is a 1/4 inch from the side, from the end of the fabric where we're going to make our miter. You just want to double check that. And again, you could also put a pin here. You could put a pin on the back or on the front, whichever one you prefer. It's kind of hard to do like that. And that way you would only go to that pin. So I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to sew down this line at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to come back and show you how we're going to miter the corner. All right, what I did is I sewed down the edge here, the raw edge, at a 1/4 inch. Now when I got to this 1/4 inch mark over here on the end, what I did is I sewed at an angle off the edge. Now you can do this, or you can just backstitch over those and leave that 1/4 inch open. Mine's not perfectly angled. It should be a little more angled, but it's not going to hurt this particular process. As long as you don't go off the edge, you should be fine. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold it away from the quilt, which is kind of counterproductive in your head. It doesn't seem like you should be folding it away. And then you're going to fold it back down. Now when you fold it back down, you're creating this little pocket. And that pocket is what's going to allow you to have the excess fabric to miter the corner. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew from this point all the way down. Now, the tricky part about sewing from this point, it's very hard to start your machine off the edge of this fabric. So we're going to use a little sample fabric, a little extra piece, to help us get that done and make it sure it really meets the edge of that binding and that fabric. So now you're going to go over to the machine with me, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam from one end to the other, and I'm going to show you back here when we miter. Okay, we're here at the machine, and I'm using a spare piece of fabric behind the fabric I'm sewing on to see if I can get the machine to lead up to it and make it a lot easier for us to catch the entire piece of this seam. Otherwise we'd have to sew from the other side. So let's see if I can. That helps. And now it just kind of catches on to the end of our fabric. Had to push it a little bit, but this is just spare. And we're going to go all the way down the end. And we're not too worried about back stitching because we're just worried about getting this on here. So now you can see that I sewed all the way to the edge, and we have all this little excess fabric, right? So we're going to go over to the table, and I'm going to show you how we're going to open this up and miter it to the other side. All right, we've got our corner on, and what we've got is this excess fabric. Now, a good trick to do when you're fixing to fold the corner is to cut off this little excess right here. This just makes it a little cleaner. You know, anytime you've got something bulky there, it kind of lays funny, so it's very minimal what we're cutting off. But it just helps. And we turn it like this. And when we turn it, you can see it puts this beautiful miter in. Can you see that? So now we're going to have it turn to the back. And depending on what kind of project we're doing, whether we're doing a quilt or a jacket or whatever. Now, since the fold is going in this way on the front, then it's best to fold the opposite way on the back. I don't know why. It just seems to help. So make sure that we're folding, let's see, I think we're folded this way. So it folds nicely. I think it's this way. Yes. All right. Go fold it down. Sorry, it takes a little finagling. Fold it down like this. Get the miters to meet right there. And then I'm going to put a little pin in it so you can see it. See? It's going to miter up just perfectly. Now, this is wide enough in the back where if you were to use those little binder clips, those quilt clips, you could quilt down the end of it and sew, stitch in the ditch from this side, and you would more than catch this. If it wasn't long enough, you may have to hand stitch it, but I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to do a quick stitch of this corner so you can see how we're going to stitch in the ditch and make it work. I'm trying to get you as close to the machine as possible so you can get a good view. And I'm going to start over here as if I had gotten all the way around and we're just getting to the corner. And I'm sorry, I'm going to start from this side. Because what I'm doing is I'm going to stitch in the ditch from the front. Okay? So let's just say I have my cute little binder clips on here. Like this. And like this. Right here. And over here. These are great to just keep things in place. And we're folding this over so we make sure we've got something in the front, but we've got enough in the back to catch it when we stitch in the ditch. That's the tricky part. This is going a little beyond the mitering of the corner, but I want you to see it. I'm going to move my needle to the center because I'm just stitching in the ditch along. And when I say that, what that means is I'm stitching where these two seams meet, where this seam meets both pieces of fabric. All Alright, so we're going to just go down and stitch in the ditch. This makes a nice clean look from the front. Of course, I forgot to take that pin out. Don't do that to your machine on a regular basis. It's cruel. Alright, and then we're going to turn. And we're going to continue. Whoop. It's a little thick right there. Now my stitching in the ditch needs some work. But this is something you can practice. And now you can see I stitched in the ditch. So I stitched right in this seam. And then on the back, it caught it. Now this is one way to do it, because this would be either on the inside of your project, on the back side of your quilt. But a lot of people still like to hand stitch. Or if you wanted to, you'd have to be a little more careful about how far you rolled it over so you could catch a little more on the edge. But from the front, it's a nice look, and you've got a nice mitered corner either way on the edge, on either side. So that's Mitered Corners in a nutshell. I hope this helped with mitering corners. It does make a nice miter on the back, but of course, like I said, I've stitched in the ditch, so I did the lazy thing. Most people will hand stitch in the back. I did on my quilting jacket too. So, but it is a nice corner regardless, both sides, and it's pretty easy to do. So if you like this kind of content, if you enjoyed learning something like this, like, subscribe, let me know what you think, comment, and I'll see y'all on the flip side of our next project.